you've been an SDR by yourself. I appreciate you taking the time. So basically, how I start, like every question before I actually go into that, I just want to like ask you, Florin, what are you truly passionate about in your work?
In my work, I think overall I'm extremely passionate about like sales development. I think one of the starting from like a very young age actually. So probably going back to grade 9, like I was selling newspapers door to door. I was selling paint jobs, similar to like, I don't know if you have College Pro in Europe at all, but here in Canada, a lot of like different college students try to start up their own like painting franchise and stuff. And I was always just an extremely competitive person. I was one of the top tennis players in Canada when I was in my younger years, and then that didn't end up fully panning out, and I ended up giving up on the dream. So I've always had that very competitive spirit. I've always enjoyed sales, and not just talking to people, but like listening to people, asking them questions, and trying to help them solve problems. And I think that's what sales is ultimately all about. And that's kind of what's led me to this path, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Like I'm also coming from a semi-professional background, in field hockey. So, the competitiveness, the thrill, it's just great to have it in your professional life as well, right? Going into a game and, you have to win the next round. Otherwise, you don't make quota. I think, you know the drill. Thank you so much. So, I mean, a lot of
there's a lot of...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's a lot of similarities between sports and sales. In a sense, I almost look at sales reps as the professional athletes of the corporate space in a way. So I think that's why a lot of athletes or people with a background in some kind of competitive sport do really well.
Yeah, I love the analogy, like they are extreme sportsmen. So like, are you still doing like, I mean, you probably do some other sports now on the other side, or like when you not work, how do you keep your mind not focusing about sales?
Yeah. So funny enough, I haven't actually played tennis probably in quite a while now, definitely over a year. I used to play in just like a recreational league just to kind of maintain it and everything. But more than anything at this point, I think it's just a lot of working out on a weekly basis, 3 to 5 times. So just making sure that, you're sharp, body's feeling good, mind's feeling good.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. Are you more a morning or evening person for your workouts?
I'm more of an evening person myself.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Some early birds there, but yeah, it's nice to end the day like this. Cool. Now, so then like I went out there and asked like, hey, what would you love to learn from Florin? And like the major thing I want to ask you about is like, why are you passionate about elevating other SDRs? Because that's like one of your big things, like demand for you, not just an SDR. Like, how did you fall into that?
Yeah. I think like one of the main reasons I'm extremely passionate about elevating SDRs is because I truly believe that it is one of the most like fundamental skills that you can have pretty much like in anything in life. Myself, like a lot of other salespeople, like we at some point we're either entrepreneurs or potentially want to become entrepreneurs. And I think like if you think about the SDR role, it's like if you can convince someone to take a meeting out of the blue with 3-4 sentences in an email or like 1 minute on a call, that's an extremely powerful skill to have, I think. Not just for starting a company, but like for your career and getting like different types of promotions, for something as simple as getting like refunds on something that you don't want to. Like if you can understand people and communicate ideas and value and be empathetic, I think that's something that's going to help you in like so many different aspects of life. And I just want more young SDRs and young professionals to kind of understand how important this skill is in your life.
Yeah, love that. How do you communicate this, in your reps? Like imagine you have a rep who is maybe not motivated anymore. Like usually after 6 or 9 months, they start to say like, oh, I'm ready for the next move. How do you light the fire in those situations with your team?
Yeah. Well, I think like any young person, even myself included, when I was an SDR, it's like you're very antsy. You're always looking for the next best thing, especially like, you know, someone that's been in sports, you're extremely competitive. You're always like looking for the next thing. And I think one thing that my mentors have told me is like, hey, you need to understand that mastering a craft takes a lot of time. And I've known for myself, like even when I was an SDR, certain things started clicking along the way and I was getting better, but I didn't really feel like I had a full grasp of a majority of the skills like objection handling, writing emails, phone calls, and really understanding our market and our buyer until like about a year. So I think one of the main things I tell a lot of people, and this is what my mentors told me, is like, just take your time. Whether you were a professional athlete, whether you know you had a separate type of job, or whether you have another hobby, even if it's like video games or whatever that might be, like if you think about the number of hours that people are putting in to do that, it takes years, and 6 to 9 months is not going to make you an expert in that. So don't focus so much on the future, focus on the present and what you can do to become a master of your craft.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's so true. That's so true. Like the moment you start to rush things, you're actually getting worse, right? But if you start to appreciate and settle, you're like, okay, and get the master, you know, the ninja in all different crafts. So that's great, man. So I mean, now that you are a leader, you are in like one of the best profiles to follow out on LinkedIn. What are the things you learned in your time as an SDR that you're applying now?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, but like a lot of the fundamental skills that you use as an SDR, you use as an account executive, you use as a manager. If I was to list a few, I'd probably say like one, like how do you help people solve problems? So whether that's through a product or somebody comes to you that you manage and is like, hey, I have a problem with this, you kind of diagnose before you give advice. You're asking questions first to understand more, and then you're pointing them on the right path. Another big one, and this is something that I kind of focus on quite a bit on LinkedIn, and I'm also going to do like a 2-hour copywriting like workshop that I do for companies.
Oh,
but
I want
like
to attend that. I want to attend that. You're the master of just to your latest post. It was like copy paste.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing I'm kind of working on. But copywriting, like how do you write a compelling story and a compelling message to be able to convey like a message, provide value, and get people to actually be interested in what you have. If you can do that, you can pretty much do anything in your professional career. And probably another one too is like negotiation. So in sales, everybody knows like there's always going to be some kind of negotiation. So how do you master that skill? And I think it's a very important one to have in life to get what you want.
Yeah, love those. I think it's very true. Like now when you've recruited a lot, and you also have seen successful reps going above, and you also wrote an article about that, like what made you very successful. What are like the patterns that you see in those reps that really make it in a sense that they are successful?
Yeah, I think at a high level, it's a few things. One, I think passion. So like people that are actually passionate about the craft and getting better, and have like a good understanding of like what their why is. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Another one I think is no excuses. I think a lot of things you'll notice in like people that are not necessarily top performers is there's always a reason as to why it's not happening. And the reason is never themselves. So I think people that are self-aware and can look inside and not make excuses and just get things done, even if certain circumstances like are getting in their way. And probably like the last big one for me is like curiosity. At the end of the day, when you need to help people solve problems, and if you get objections, what you need to do is not just pitch back. You need to understand people, where they're coming from. And I think that takes a lot of curiosity and asking questions.
Yeah, really good. I look also for this, but I mean, I'm also new to this role and hiring, so that's great. So what are your top 3 things that you ask when interviewing a rep, when you sit there for Loopio, the next superstar?
Yeah, I think So I would say like the first question I think is very basic, nothing revolutionary, but just understanding like why are you passionate about sales? And I think that answer can kind of tell you a lot about whether someone actually wants to be in sales in an SDR, or if this is something that they just think is like a stepping stone. At the end of the day, this is like an extremely tough job. Everybody knows that. So if you don't have a good why and a passion for doing this, I think it's very difficult to succeed. Another big one I think is, so we love to do some kind of like a pitch or a cold call in the interview.
Mm-hmm.
So just like a relatively high pressure situation that you don't know about. Can you kind of run through a cold call with us? And then I think the most important thing is not necessarily how the initial cold call went, but once we provide you feedback on how the cold call went, can you kind of adjust, and how are you actually taking feedback? That's one of the main things, because yeah. So at the end of the day, it's like you need to be coachable, right? And if you can't take feedback in an interview, you're probably not going to be able to take it in the role when feedback is given to you constantly. And then I think one of the last ones that I personally like is a more of a creative question. So
now I'm excited.
So we want to think about like some creative ways of how people would prospect. So we usually ask like, let's say you had 24 hours to get a message to Elon Musk. Like, how would you go about making sure that you get his attention? And that kind of just shows like the creativity side of things. Like, how are people thinking about, creative ways to prospect, getting people's attention and stuff. And it's kind of funny to see different answers.
Yeah. How would you prospect Elon Musk, Florin? What would you do?
That is a good question. Well, so I know that Elon Musk is like he's very big on Twitter. And I actually saw somebody essentially kind of make a little campaign on Twitter where he was like, I'm going to tweet to Elon Musk every day for 365 days until he responds to me. And I think like on day 165, Elon Musk actually responded to him. So
wow.
I thought that was like kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
And he's also, if you notice Elon Musk, like in his patterns of responding to people, he usually answers questions about like rocket ships and space and stuff. So maybe thinking of a very like creative question around rockets, or maybe criticizing one of his rockets or something and seeing if he would respond. I feel like that would get to him.
yeah, getting to the know as fast as possible. Love that. So
exactly.
Back in the day, when you started a couple of years ago, you walked first day into the office as an SDR. What are the things you would have told your younger self going into that role?
I think probably one of the first things is staying level-headed. I think a lot of the times, like I would wear my heart on my sleeve. So it's like through the ups, they felt really good, and the downs felt really bad. And there's certain situations where you're just so frustrated with like a prospect or a customer, and you just like don't understand the reasoning, and just like taking a step back and just learning to be more level-headed through such a roller coaster that's going to happen. Because I think it's easy to get caught up in that, and if you're in a rut, it's hard to get out of the rut. But like if you just focus on what you can control, I think that's the best way for you to become consistent and good.
Yeah, that's so true. Like I remember first time I did prospecting, I forgot to follow up. I felt shit for a week. I was like scared. Oh no, what they're gonna think about me? Like, oh, my boss. And I felt so bad. And I think I even like did the email that in the evening because I've just forgot it. But you go through this roller coaster. Like now that you have been in the industry for quite some time now. How are your ways now to stay level-headed? I think one part you already said is like working out, getting out of work. But how do you? Yeah, what are your tips there?
Yeah, obviously, like being physically and mentally like healthy, I think is always going to be important. And I think what some people don't do enough is like talking to other salespeople. Like everyone is going through the same types of stuff. So whether it's like your colleagues or friends that you have that might be in like somewhat similar industries, I think just sharing like your ups and downs with them and just being able to get through things together. And that's why I think we all need to like kind of elevate ourselves. And that's why I post like so much on LinkedIn and trying to help different people through like career coaching and stuff. You just want to make sure that we're all there for each other, because obviously it's a tough role, but I think it's one of the most rewarding roles on the planet, really.
Yeah, and I think that's so true, Florin. I think that's what people really appreciate about you as well. Like if there's a question, I remember I think a year ago I wrote to you that you helped me like exceed 200% of my quota, and you just answered immediately. I will never forget that. So yeah, that's fantastic. I think the crowd loves you for that. So thank you once again. You are a master of objection handling. I gotta be honest. When you posted that amount of the objections you were able to handle, we now are doing weekly objection handling master classes, right? Because we've done it before. We do it in a daily stand-up, but I've now put like an additional focus on objection handling. What are your tips around like handling objection? Why do you think it's so important, and what are your like tips and tricks there?
Yeah, I think the thing with objection handling, I think a lot of people just treat it as like, people don't look behind the objection and realize like there's a person there that has like reasons for their objections. And a lot of people, you hear an objection and right away you try to handle it. And usually the one thing that I always like tell SDRs and my reps is like, whenever you hear an objection, take a step back and ask questions. There's a person behind there that has their own motivations, their own story, their own reason, their own circumstance. If we don't truly understand why a person is saying an objection, we're never going to be able to handle it in a proper way. So I think objection handling, and to be good at it, like you really have to understand human psychology. Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways I think for most SDRs to do that, especially if you haven't like read Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, I think that's a fantastic place to start. And there's a whole other ton of the book. I think like Influence is another good one. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Is a book that I read in high school that kind of changed my life and thinking about like how people react to different situations and how the mind works. So I think that's the most important part of objection handling. Yeah,
that's great. And how do you sort of structure objection handling? Like, do you also do a lot of training, or how are you making sure that you're putting your reps in a situation where they are constantly like applying those things as well? Because it's a lot of practice, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely obviously like there's training sessions that we do on objection handling, and we want to make sure that we're doing it on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. And then on a weekly basis, we do like I personally hold office hours for my team, so people can just drop in, and if they ever have like situations they need help with, we kind of run through them. And then another thing that we do is something. So every Wednesday, we essentially have this meeting across the whole SDR team called SDR Swarm, where that whole meeting is specifically meant for the whole SDR team to come together. If you have a certain situation or objection, we brainstorm and swarm the idea together. And I think like if you have a collaborative space where you can do that on a weekly basis, that's like when people actually learn and get better at it. Yeah, I love that idea. Like bees or something, a team coming together and solving the problem. Exactly. Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much. I would love to ask you also a bit of stuff about like emailing, copywriting. And I think actually, we all sort of know what you think are the patterns of a cold email. It's in your content. It's actually a question that I'm not necessarily want to ask because it's all there. You are very vocal about that. But how do you think about the whole like scale personalization? And I know that you're also very big about relevance topic actually. So, when do you think it's okay to like scale, and how do you sort of keep that balance from strict rules towards freestyling or more freedom? Yeah, I think, I guess like a couple of thoughts on that. Like, there's obviously, it's always going to be a fine balance between skill and like personalization, or what I think is more important, relevance over personalization. And what I mean by that is like people kind of go for like triggers of like, oh, like someone was on a sports team, or they have this hobby, or like they say something. And then it's like, if you can't connect that personal trigger to why you're reaching out with your product or solution, I think the message kind of falls flat. So when I say personalization or relevance is more important, it's like, can you find a trigger that's relevant? Like, has the sales team grown? Is there some kind of like funding that happened? Is there like a new position that's available, or job posting that you think can make your product help the team a bit more? I think that's like how I usually like to start off an email in context as to why I'm reaching out, as opposed to something like super personal, which tends to be more difficult to tie back to the value of your software or solution or whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
But I think like the way that I look at it, there's different levels of accounts. Like if you're dealing with huge enterprise accounts and like this is a strategic account that the company needs, I think at that point, scale is not as important. You need to have a very like customized and personal message to those people. And that's where like you kind of want to get away from templates or anything like that. And you want to focus on actually crafting a full like story in a brief email. But I think there's like, if you tier your accounts and you have like A, B, and C accounts, if you have certain accounts that are not as important, kind of a higher volume, maybe like industry that you're just like checking out, I think it's okay to spend less time and focus more on having like a templated message and maybe just a little bit of tweaking or a one sentence of customization if needed.
Yeah, great. What Kyle also said is, personalization doesn't, like good personalization doesn't necessarily have to be scalable, right? Because otherwise everybody would do it. Like you said, right? It's still a craft to be able to find that relevancy. Otherwise we would all be computers and they could do that. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. 4 minutes left. I know you're busy. So you also get prospected a lot. What's the craftiest way you have been prospected?
The craftiest way that I've been prospected. Funny enough, I feel like I haven't been prospected in that crafty of a way, which is actually why
that's a statement.
I'm serious. I think like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like people have sent like, potential like gifts or like made videos and like all that different kind of stuff. But I think a lot of that is like gimmicks in a way. It's like, just because you're going to send some kind of like a swag or a gift, at the end of the day, if you're a manager or director or somebody that's making decisions, you have problems that you're dealing with every day. There's a ton of decisions you need to make. Like a gift in itself, if I don't see value in your platform, is not going to be very useful to me. So this is actually something I tell my teams too. It's like, don't go with the gimmicks, or don't just make a video for the sake of making a video because you think it's different. Like tell a good story. Like, why is this a relevant time for that person to reach out to you? And I think that's when you actually book more meetings. And I think some of the industry forgets that in this day and age.
Yeah, I really like that. Like I had never the opportunity to send any gifts, we don't have that yet. So, sometimes he's like, they are sending all those swag, they're sending golf balls. Like, that's cool, but I mean, pick up the phone or like come up with a challenge that they actually need to solve. So I've always admired that, the possibility to even send stuff, it's like
yeah, exactly.
Cool. I think 1 more minute left. So what are the things that you are excited about in the next 5 years in our space?
It's a good question. I think like technology is getting interesting, and I think there's a lot of like different artificial intelligence like type of things with like, I think it's called Kea by Outreach, where you have like the cards that pop up on calls, and it's like, oh, they just talked about this, like here's information that pops up for you so that you know as a rep like how to handle those situations. Or even tools like Gong, where like their machine learning and artificial intelligence is getting better to help provide you insights into like what you're doing well on calls and different things like that. I think that type of stuff is interesting to me, but we always have to remember like the fundamentals of sales are always going to be there. Make sure that you're not using these different types of tools or technologies as a distraction on your calls, because I think it can go both ways. It's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So we have to remember, as SDRs and as leaders that are coaching, like, we need to always make sure that our teams are fundamentally sound in that, because no matter what's going to happen with technology or the future of the industry, like, that's the whole point of fundamentals, that they never are really going away, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Thank you so much.
And then
yeah,
no worries at all. I know I can do a couple more minutes here. I saw the last question, and I thought it was important to kind of answer it, because I think it's quite helpful. Like, in terms of like the best tip for starting to build a personal LinkedIn brand.
Yeah.
So I started writing when I was an SDR in 2015. I didn't actually even get any traction at all on LinkedIn until like probably in the last like year or so, like maybe 2 years. So my biggest tip, and I think a lot of people say this, is just start writing. If you're an SDR and you face challenges every day and you find a good way to like prospect or something that's working for you, I promise you there's thousands and thousands of other people out there that could use that, and it could help them. So don't think that just because, you know, you're relatively new in a role that you don't know anything. I think there's a lot of people that could use your help. And I think you might be pleasantly surprised if you just like consistently start writing. Maybe just once a week, maybe it's once a month to start. You just have to start doing it. And again, we have to lift each other up as an industry, and like, we're all going through difficult times, especially like in the last year and a half in COVID, and being an SDR and sitting at home in your room and calling all day and like getting 95% no's. And it's like, if we're not there for each other and we don't help each other, then you know, we're going to be lost. And I think that's why I'm passionate about it, and why I do it, just to help elevate the profession. Yeah,
Florin, thank you so much for also stating that. It was the same for me. You know, the people were already going, you know, grabbing a drink, and I was like, no, I booked this meeting in a crazy way, you know, I want to write about it. And then I just, you know, like similar like you recommended like once a week. Okay, I'm gonna do it. Like, my learning, it's like a memoir, you know, what have I actually learned and what worked. So yeah, thank you so much for highlighting that. Cool. Anything you would like to add? Anything you want to put out there?
I would just say, like, I mean, follow me on LinkedIn. I think one of the things that I try to do is I don't post anything that we don't personally use as a team and that is successful. So if you're interested in just like tips on objection handling, copywriting, if you ever just want to like reach out to me and just have a conversation, I'm always happy to help different people here in the SDR space, or in the sales space in general. And you know, I hope you keep doing your thing too, because you're killing it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. I can only recommend you, Florin. You're like my top 5 or top 3 even. It's you, Kyle. I like Devin, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, and then yeah, but you're one of the top. So yeah, thank you so much. Like, how did that feel? Like, did you like the format where the question is good? You know, I'm also like testing this out, so I'm, you know, on episode 12 right now. So if you have any feedback, let me know. Yeah.
100%. No, it felt good. It felt natural. Like, I thought you had some good follow-up questions and important questions. So I think the biggest thing is just keep doing it. If you can talk to like good leaders and like hear different ideas, people will listen to you. You're building a brand. So keep doing you, my friend.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.